The rain had started before Ethan even pulled out of his apartment complex. Not a gentle drizzle, not a passing cloudburst, but a full-on assault from the heavens, as if the world itself was warning him to turn back. But he didn't. Not this time. Ethan Cole had made 1,000 excuses in the last year. Reasons he couldn't visit, reasons he missed calls, reasons he forgot birthdays and rescheduled weekends. Every time his daughter Lily had needed him, he'd convinced himself there would be a next time. Now, on the cusp of her 16th birthday, there might not be another one. This wasn't about being on time anymore. It was about being there. At all. He gripped the steering wheel harder, his knuckles white against the dashboard light as the wipers whipped across the windshield in a frantic rhythm. The road ahead was a slick blur of red taillights and reflective sheen, framed by the skeletal branches of trees bending under the weight of wind and water. The storm was unforgiving, but it mirrored the mess inside him. Guilt, shame, and desperation churned in his gut, a storm no less fierce than the one outside. Ethan hadn't seen Lily in 5 months. Not since that terrible argument in the courthouse hallway after the custody hearing. She had stood behind Vanessa, her arms crossed tightly, face emotionless. That expression, so mature, so shut off, haunted him. It was a look he didn't recognize. And worse, it was a look that didn't need him. That's what pushed him into the car tonight. Not the date on the calendar. Not the voicemail from his sister reminding him what day it was. It was the realization that Lily was drifting so far out of his orbit, soon he wouldn't even be a memory, just a blurry face in a dusty photo. So he threw an overnight bag in the back seat, grabbed an old photo of the two of them from when she was 8, and drove into the storm with nothing but a fading dream and the hope that she hadn't completely closed the door on him. The GPS flickered, recalculating endlessly as flooded roads forced detours. Each added minute was a dagger to his nerves. His mind spun with imagined scenarios. Lily crying when she saw him, Lily refusing to speak, Lily running into his arms, Lily slamming the door in his face. He replayed what he'd say if she gave him even 10 seconds, something honest, something raw, something that might crack the shell around her. "I'm sorry I left. I didn't know how to stay. But I never stopped being your dad." Lightning split the sky above the 2-lane highway, illuminating the twisted branches of an old tree just seconds before it crashed across the road 50 yards ahead of him. Ethan slammed the brakes, tires screeching, heart hammering as the car skidded to a halt just feet from the fallen trunk. His breath came in, short, panicked gasps. For a moment, he wondered if this was the universe's final verdict. "You failed too many times. Go home." But then he thought of her, Lily, at 16, maybe waiting for a father who never showed up. Again. And with a deep breath, he threw the car into reverse, backed onto the shoulder, and found another route. Hours passed. Towns blurred together. The clock on the dash mocked him, 3:04 a.m., and he realized he hadn't eaten since noon. But the ache in his stomach had nothing to do with hunger. His mind was too loud. It echoed with all the versions of fatherhood he'd tried and failed to live up to. The fun dad who showed up with tickets to amusement parks, the responsible dad who swore he'd never badmouth Vanessa, the broken dad who forgot the dates that mattered most. And still, the image that kept him going was Lily at 5, clinging to his neck after her ballet recital, whispering in his ear, "You're my hero, Daddy." He needed to find his way back to that moment. Not for nostalgia, for redemption. The final stretch was uphill, both literally and figuratively. The mansion, Vanessa's childhood estate, was perched on a bluff overlooking the coast, surrounded by twisted oaks and thick fog. The drive there had always felt like entering another world, rich, pristine, untouchable. Ethan hated that place. It never felt like home. Vanessa had made sure of that, but Lily would be there tonight. That was all that mattered. As he pulled into the long, curved driveway, he cut the engine and sat for a moment, watching the raindrops bead and streak down the windshield. Music thumped faintly from inside the house, muffled bass, laughter, glass clinking. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. It was meant to be a surprise. He'd imagined her face when she saw him, imagined her eyes lighting up, imagined maybe, just maybe, a hug. He stepped out of the car and into the cold rain, the wind slicing through his jacket. The night air smelled like wet leaves, salt, and something sour he couldn't place. He walked slowly toward the glow of the house, every step heavy with years of regret and a quiet hope clinging to life. He was soaked before he reached the porch, but something deeper than rain chilled him to the bone. Whatever awaited him inside, Ethan knew one thing for certain. This night would change everything. Ethan had always hated the sound of his own footsteps in expensive shoes. The hard soles echoed on the marble floor of the grand foyer like a warning bell. It was the kind of house where secrets were lacquered into the woodwork, where appearances were everything, and he'd never felt welcome here, not even when he lived in it. The moment he stepped through the ornate double doors, unannounced and dripping with rain, he realized how far removed he'd become from this world. He wasn't expected. He wasn't wanted. Inside, the party was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers gleamed overhead, casting golden light over velvet drapes, and a grand staircase wound like a spine through the center of the room. Electronic music pulsed low and sensuous beneath the chatter of well-dressed strangers. There were no balloons, no party hats, no teenage giggles. Instead, there were long-stemmed glasses of champagne, expensive jewelry, and a guest list clearly curated for status, not celebration. Ethan hovered in the threshold, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. A valet had opened the door for him as if he belonged, but no one else noticed his arrival. They were too busy sipping from flutes and murmuring behind manicured hands. He searched the crowd for Lily, his Lily. Then he saw her. At first, he didn't recognize her. Standing under the dim light at the far end of the room, she looked like a stranger, tall and poised, wrapped in a sleek black cocktail dress with a slit far too high for 16. Her hair, once tangled with curls and wildflowers, had been straightened into a polished cascade. Her lips were painted red. Her eyes, he couldn't see her eyes. She was laughing with two older men who had no business being anywhere near a teenager's birthday. One placed a hand on her lower back as he leaned in to whisper something. Lily didn't flinch. Ethan's stomach clenched. He took a few slow steps forward, his shoes squelching faintly against the pristine floors. Still, no one noticed him. No one offered a greeting, not even a second glance. He realized with a jolt that this party wasn't just for Lily, it might not be for her at all. He hovered near a cluster of guests and caught snippets of conversation. Words like investment opportunity, international contacts, and modeling contract floated through the air. These people weren't here to celebrate a girl. They were here to network. And Lily was the product on display. A woman brushed past him, reeking of perfume and disdain, clutching a glass of wine as she leaned into another guest's ear. Vanessa always knows how to throw an event. And Lily? She's going to be a star. Just like her mother planned. Her mother planned. That phrase hit Ethan like a slap. He looked back at Lily, whose laughter was louder now, more deliberate. Performed. Her eyes flitted across the room, avoiding every camera flash, every outstretched hand. Ethan suddenly wondered if this was a party or a stage. He moved toward the side of the room, careful to stay out of sight. He felt like a trespasser in his own daughter's life, watching from the wings while someone else directed the scene. Near the patio doors, he paused behind a curtain and let the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. Every inch of him was soaked, yet he was burning inside. Ashamed, furious, confused. Was this what Vanessa wanted? Was this who she'd groomed Lily to become? And where had he been while it was happening? He tried to make eye contact with Lily from across the room, but she never looked toward the entrance. It was as if she'd been trained not to. His attention snapped to the hallway on the left side of the house. Two men emerged from it in suits. Not guests, not waiters, something else. One of them tapped an earpiece and muttered something. The other gave a subtle nod. They disappeared back down the corridor like shadows. Security. But for what? This wasn't a birthday party. This was an operation. Suddenly, the music swelled and a voice came over the speakers. Everyone, please welcome the woman of the hour, Miss Lily Maddox. Ethan's heart thudded at the sound of her new last name. Maddox, Vanessa's maiden name, not Cole, not his. He felt a flash of disorientation, like the ground beneath him was tilting. People applauded. Flashbulbs burst. Lily stepped onto a small dais, surrounded by ambient light and murmurs of admiration. She smiled, the same smile Vanessa used to flash in front of reporters. But her eyes were empty. In that moment, Ethan realized the depth of what had been taken from him. Not just time, not just custody, but the very essence of his daughter. Whatever innocence Lily once had been repackaged, rebranded, and sold to this room full of polished predators. And the worst part? He had no idea how to get her back. The ice in Ethan's veins had nothing to do with the rainwater still dripping from his collar. It was the sight of them, Vanessa and Marcus Kane, laughing like old lovers in a room they had claimed for themselves, oblivious to the man they had both betrayed. He hadn't seen Marcus in over a year, not since the morning Ethan found the texts, not since he confronted Vanessa with proof, photos, timestamps, messages far too intimate to be mistaken. That was the day his marriage ended, the day his trust was annihilated by two people who were supposed to protect his heart, not carve it up like meat at a banquet. Now here they were, clinking champagne flutes like royalty at a coronation. Vanessa stood in a floor-length crimson gown, draped in confidence and diamonds. Her laughter rang out like the toll of a bell, clear, deliberate, and far too pleased with itself. Marcus, always charming, always one joke away from getting what he wanted, leaned in close, whispering something that made her throw her head back and touch his chest. Ethan felt physically ill. They stood at the edge of the room, holding court near the fireplace, surrounded by a semicircle of sycophants. People who didn't know, or didn't care, that Marcus had once been the best man at Ethan's wedding. People who didn't see the way Vanessa used to cry in Ethan's arms when she felt alone in her own family. People who never saw the night Ethan came home early to find them together. The betrayal unfolding like a twisted theater play in his own bed. His fists clenched at his sides. The idea of walking across the room, of grabbing Marcus by the collar and finally, after all these months, demanding the truth. It flared hot in his chest. But he didn't move. He couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he slipped back into the shadows near the coat check, his breath shallow, his heart hammering in his ears. He was a ghost here. A ghost at his daughter's party. And no one noticed. Then Vanessa looked up. For one terrifying second, their eyes met across the room. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered. Recognition, alarm, calculation. She turned slightly, shifting her body so Marcus's back blocked her view of Ethan. Her hand brushed his elbow subtly, and Marcus turned as well. The message was clear. Don't let him see. They weren't surprised he had come. They were prepared. Ethan's chest tightened. Was this planned? Had they known he'd come crawling back on her 16th birthday, hoping to play the hero in some dramatic redemptive scene? Was this whole performance, Vanessa's red dress, Marcus's hand on Lily's shoulder, the crowd, the cameras, was it all designed for him to see? Was he the final audience? A creeping suspicion coiled around his mind, something dark and insidious. Had they been watching him? Tracking his movements? Manipulating him, even now? Drawing him back into a narrative he thought he'd escaped? His gaze snapped back to Marcus, who now held a glass of bourbon and wore the same smug expression he had the night Ethan first introduced him to Vanessa. Marcus had always been too slick, too polished, too good with words. He could turn any scandal into a misunderstanding, any betrayal into a necessary evil. And people believed him. So did Ethan. Once. But what he saw now wasn't just two people who had fallen into an affair. It was a partnership. Strategic, intentional, powerful, dangerous. Behind them, Lily reappeared, her heels clicking lightly across the marble floor. She took Marcus's arm without hesitation and leaned against his shoulder. He bent down and whispered something into her ear. She nodded. It was casual, practiced, intimate. Ethan's stomach dropped. It wasn't just that Marcus was here, it was the ease with which he fit into Lily's world. The ease with which she let him. Did she see him as a father figure? Had Vanessa replaced Ethan in her mind and quietly slotted Marcus into the vacancy? He remembered a moment years ago. Lily was 8, and they were building a science project together. Vanessa had been away, as usual. Lily had looked up at Ethan, her face smudged with glue and glitter, and said, "Promise me we'll always do things together, just us." He had promised. And then he broke it. He missed birthdays, missed the calls, missed the signs that something was deeply, dangerously wrong. Ethan turned away from the scene, pressing himself against the wall near the side hallway. His pulse thundered in his ears. He needed answers, and not the ones Vanessa would offer with that honeyed voice and politician smile. He needed proof, and if he was going to get it, he couldn't let emotion drive him. Not yet. The ghosts of his past had returned, and this time, they weren't content to haunt. They were here to erase him. Ethan pressed his back against the wall in the dim hallway just off the main room, his breath shallow and his shirt clinging to his skin. The hum of the party faded to a low throb behind him. Here, in the narrow corridor that led toward the study and private wing of the house, the air felt heavier, more secretive. It was the kind of place people ducked into for whispered deals or illicit conversations, not the kind of space meant for celebration. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, not consciously, but when he heard the familiar rhythm of Vanessa's heels echoing toward him, something instinctive told him to wait, still and silent like prey under a predator's shadow. She wasn't alone. Marcus's voice followed close behind, low and casual. "So, he really showed up? I told you he would." Vanessa's heels stopped. "I didn't think he'd actually come in the rain. That's the only thing that surprises me. He's desperate now. That makes him reckless." Ethan's stomach turned. "Let him see what he's missing," Marcus continued, his voice dripping smug satisfaction. "She's practically unrecognizable. You've done a hell of a job, Ness." Vanessa gave a soft laugh. "I had help." There was a pause, a long one. Then came the words that hit Ethan like a sledgehammer to the chest. "He still thinks she's his." A silence followed. Not awkward, not uncertain. Comfortable. Confirmed. Ethan's breath caught. He had to cover his mouth with his hand to muffle the sound of it. Marcus let out a quiet chuckle. And what if he finds out the truth? What if he starts asking questions? Vanessa's voice turned colder, controlled. "He won't. He's emotional, not strategic. If he had real evidence, he'd have thrown it in my face the moment he walked in. But if he does, he won't," she said sharply, then softer. "Besides, it's too late for him. She's too far gone. She doesn't even talk about him anymore." The hallway swam before Ethan's eyes. The walls closed in. His heart was thundering so loudly he feared they'd hear it. "She's not mine. No. No, that couldn't be." He remembered the day Lily was born. He remembered holding her in that hospital room, her impossibly small fingers curling around one of his. He remembered Vanessa's exhaustion, her tears. He remembered thinking, "This is the best thing I've ever done. Could all of it have been a lie?" He pressed a trembling hand against the wall to steady himself as their voices receded down the hall. When they were gone, when only silence remained, Ethan staggered back into the shadowed corner near the service door and collapsed against the wall, trying to breathe. His mind scrambled for logic, for timelines, for anything that would make this not true. He remembered Vanessa's second trimester, how distant she had become, the business trips, the unexplained absences. She had said it was stress. She had said she needed space. And when he offered more help, she pushed him further away. Now he saw it differently. Not as the emotional detachment of a woman preparing for motherhood, but the cold calculations of someone orchestrating a fraud. What if he had never been part of the plan? What if the entire marriage had been built on convenience, control, and image, his role reduced to that of a placeholder, a provider, a name on a birth certificate? He thought of Lily again. Her face, so carefully painted, so eerily adult. Her stiff posture when she was introduced, the guarded look in her eyes. Not once had she looked for him in the crowd. Not once had she asked where he was. Was it because she didn't care? Or because she didn't know she should? A wave of nausea hit him and he swallowed it down. He had to focus. He had to move. He couldn't let himself spiral into grief. Not yet. There were still too many unanswered questions. Who was her father, if not him? Why now? Why throw such an elaborate, adult-themed event for a teenager? Unless there was something darker beneath it. Was Lily in danger? Or worse, was she complicit? No, not Lily. Not the little girl who once clung to his neck during thunderstorms, who cried when he left on business trips, who made him Father's Day cards with glitter and crooked hearts. She had to still be in there somewhere. He had to get answers. Quietly, carefully. He wiped the sweat and rain from his forehead and took one final shaky breath before slipping farther into the house, toward the study. That's where Vanessa kept her private files, her contracts, her secrets. He didn't know what he was going to find. But the whisper he had just heard had changed everything. Lily wasn't just slipping away from him. She might never have been his to begin with. Ethan didn't sleep that night. The storm outside the mansion raged on, the relentless rain pounding against the windows like a warning drumbeat. Inside, the house felt suffocating, every polished surface gleaming with cold indifference. The party had long since fizzled out for most guests, but Ethan remained, his mind churning as he silently moved through the rooms. He knew he had to find out the truth. He needed to understand who Lily really was, and what she had become. The first clue came unexpectedly. A sleek black smartphone lay abandoned on a side table in the dimly lit lounge, screen cracked but still active. Ethan's heart pounded as he picked it up. He hesitated, fingers trembling, then tapped the screen awake. The gallery was filled with photos and videos, most innocuous, showing Lily posing in elegant dresses. But one video caught his eye. It was recent, from only a few days ago. The video began with Lily speaking softly, her voice almost a whisper. "Please, someone help me. I'm scared. I don't know what to do." Her eyes were wet, brimming with tears that hadn't fallen yet, lips trembling. The video abruptly cut off before she could say more. Ethan's throat tightened. Who was she begging? Why? He scrolled through the phone, piecing together more evidence. A series of messages between Lily and an unknown contact, labeled only as M. The tone was cryptic, full of veiled threats and coded language. "Did you get the package?" "Not yet. They're watching. You have to do it tonight. No more delays." Ethan swallowed hard, every instinct screaming that Lily was trapped in something far darker than he had ever imagined. The glamorous party, the adult guests, the polished smiles, it was a cover for something sinister. Determined to find answers, he retraced his steps, slipping into the rooms that had been locked during the party. Eventually, he found a study, where a large oak desk was cluttered with papers, files, and a laptop left open but unattended. He rifled through the documents with growing horror. Contracts with modeling agencies that required Lily to attend private events. Statements from therapy sessions, heavily redacted, but containing phrases like identity confusion, manipulation by parental figures, and risk of exploitation. And then, the damning piece. A folder marked custody cases, thick with files from multiple families. Ethan's eyes scanned the names. Familiar faces from the local divorce courts, all linked to Vanessa's legal firm. The files suggested a pattern of falsified DNA reports, fabricated allegations of neglect, and custody battles won by deceit. His breath caught when he found one particular case, Lily Maddox's own file. It contained a birth certificate, but also another document labeled Parentage Affidavit, with a name he didn't recognize. Was this the real father? Ethan felt the ground shift beneath him. The woman he had once loved, the mother of his supposed child, had been running a far-reaching, tangled scheme involving custody fraud, manipulation, and possibly even blackmail. Lily was not only caught in the middle, she was a pawn, a piece moved strategically to maintain a facade. The laptop chimed softly, a message alert. He opened it cautiously. "Be careful where you look. Some truths aren't meant to be uncovered." No signature. Ethan's pulse quickened. He wasn't just intruding in a secret world. He was stepping into a dangerous game. His mind raced back to the video. Lily's whispered plea for help. The coded messages. Was she aware of the conspiracy? Was she being used, or was she terrified of what would happen if she resisted? And what about Marcus, the man who had smoothly replaced Ethan in their lives? Was he complicit? A mastermind? Or just another player? Ethan knew he couldn't trust anyone in this house. Not Vanessa, not Marcus, not even Lily if she was hiding her own truths. His fingers clenched into fists. This wasn't just about a birthday surprise gone wrong anymore. It was about saving the girl he thought he knew, or at least saving whatever was left of her. Determined to act, Ethan pocketed the phone and gathered the most incriminating documents. He needed evidence to confront Vanessa, to expose the lies, and to protect Lily from whatever fate Vanessa's shadowy connections had planned. But as he turned to leave the study, a creak behind him made him freeze. The door opened slowly. Lily stood there, face pale, eyes wide, with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Dad," she whispered. For the first time all night, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. No matter the secrets, the betrayals, or the lies, there was still a chance to reach her. The study door clicked shut behind Lily, leaving Ethan alone once more, his heart still pounding from their brief, fraught exchange. Her voice had been soft, uncertain, but it had cracked with something real: fear, regret, or a desperate hope that someone, anyone, was finally listening. He clung to that sliver of humanity in her expression, but now, more than ever, he needed to understand the full scope of what she, and so many others, had been pulled into. Ethan returned to the documents he'd hastily collected from Marcus's briefcase. It wasn't a stretch to assume Marcus and Vanessa had left it unguarded in their arrogance. After all, why would they think he of all people would stumble into their private war room? The folder labeled "Custody Privileged" was thicker than the rest. Ethan set it on the desk and slowly began to go through it, page by damning page. Each file followed a pattern. First, a married couple with a child, often a high-value custody case with financial assets at stake. Next, a psychological profile of the target parent, nearly all of them fathers. Notes from therapy sessions, many seemingly fabricated or taken out of context, portrayed them as unstable, emotionally abusive, or unfit. Then came the manipulated medical and DNA reports, often declaring disputed paternity without citing any credible labs. There were emails between law offices, digital forensic reports of evidence conveniently uncovered from phone backups or cloud data. It was all doctored, but masterfully so, just plausible enough to survive courtroom scrutiny. Ethan's stomach turned when he saw his own name in one of the oldest folders. The report described him as emotionally volatile due to unresolved grief, potential alcoholism, and obsessive tendencies. A complete character assassination, none of which had ever been proven, because none of it was real. He flipped further and found case notes from his own custody hearing. The therapist they had used, someone Vanessa insisted was neutral, had written in her notes, "Subject displays signs of cognitive dissonance when discussing the child. Avoidant behavior may stem from subconscious recognition of non-paternity." Ethan's hands trembled, so it hadn't just been neglect. They'd planted the idea that he wasn't Lily's father years ago, long before he ever had reason to question it. They were preparing him for this moment from the beginning. And it worked. He had withdrawn, questioned himself, even accepted Vanessa's claim that Lily needed distance. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was manipulation. But it got worse. Another file, marked with a red tab, was labeled Maddox L. Special Case. This one had both Vanessa and Marcus's names scribbled across the margins in pen. According to the documents, Lily wasn't Vanessa's biological daughter either. Ethan sat back, stunned. The report detailed a transfer of legal guardianship following a, quote, closed family settlement between Marcus and an unnamed woman who had died years ago. There was no trace of this woman's identity, only a sealed affidavit and a non-disclosure agreement signed by Vanessa. It was all there in black and white: a payout, a falsified birth certificate, and court documents that legitimized Lily's place in Vanessa's home. They had stolen her identity. Lily was a child passed between players in a custody game so sinister it bordered on trafficking, not for ransom, but for control. It made sense now why she looked so detached, so different. She'd grown up in a world where identity was a currency, where the truth was molded by whomever held the most power. A sudden knock on the study door made Ethan snap the folder shut. It was the butler, stone-faced, polite. "Mr. Cole, your presence is requested in the parlor. Ms. Maddox would like a word." "Now?" Ethan asked, doing his best to hide the panic in his voice. "Yes, sir," she said immediately. Ethan tucked the documents under his jacket and followed the man, his steps quiet but his thoughts a storm. In the parlor, Vanessa was already seated, legs crossed elegantly, wineglass in hand. Marcus stood behind her, hands in his pockets, watching Ethan like a lion sizing up wounded prey. "I assume you've been snooping," Vanessa said calmly, not even bothering to feign surprise. "I know everything," Ethan said. "You lied. About Lily. About the custody cases. You've been running a con, using children as pawns." Vanessa smiled, but her eyes narrowed. "That's a dangerous thing to accuse someone of, Ethan." Marcus stepped forward. "You're still emotional. You don't know what you're talking about." "I have documents," Ethan snapped. "Signatures, bank transfers, sealed affidavits. You think I won't take this to the authorities?" Vanessa's smile slipped. For a moment, just a moment, Ethan saw something behind her eyes. Not guilt, not fear, but calculation. "Careful, Ethan," she said smoothly. "You think you're protecting Lily, but you don't know the full story. You never have." "What does that mean?" Vanessa took a long sip of wine and stood. "You want to play hero? Fine. But remember, sometimes the truth doesn't save people, it destroys them." She left the room, Marcus trailing silently behind her. Ethan stood there alone, fists clenched around the folder beneath his coat. Whatever was coming next, the storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside this house. But at least now, he had evidence, and more importantly, a reason to fight. He wasn't just a father trying to reclaim his daughter anymore. He was a man on a mission to burn the entire empire of lies to the ground. The storm howled louder now, no longer just a background hum. It screamed like a wounded animal as it battered the walls of the estate. Lightning flared behind the stained glass windows, casting jagged shadows across the ornate halls. Inside, tension curled through the air like smoke. Every room had become a chamber of secrets, every corridor echoing with silence that wasn't empty. It was watching. Ethan stood in the grand foyer, drenched again. Not from rain this time, but from sweat. The confrontation in the parlor had left him rattled but galvanized. He had evidence. He had answers. But what he didn't have was Lily. After confronting Vanessa and Marcus, he returned to the study, only to find the phone he'd taken from the lounge was gone. The folder he'd hidden under his coat? Rifled through. They were watching him. But there was no time to retreat. He had to find Lily. She had disappeared after their brief encounter. No one seemed to know where she'd gone. A few guests were still milling about, sipping the last of the wine, unaware, or deliberately ignorant, of the storm brewing inside the house. The help was silent, robotic. Ethan even asked the butler if he'd seen her. The man only offered a practiced, lifeless shrug. Then he heard it, footsteps upstairs, rapid and light. Ethan took the stairs 2 at a time, following the sound toward the west wing of the mansion, rooms he hadn't explored yet. The storm's fury shook the windows here, and the hallway lights flickered. He turned a corner and nearly collided with Lily. She was barefoot, her hair undone and eyes red. Not from crying, but from sheer exhaustion, the kind that comes from years of carrying burdens too heavy for someone her age. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, backing away from him. "Lily, wait, please," Ethan said, stepping forward. "I know what they've done. I've seen the documents. I know, they've been using you." She froze, lips trembling. "You think I didn't know?" she said bitterly. "I've known for years. They told me when I was 12. Said I was lucky, that I got a family, that I was chosen." "Chosen?" Ethan repeated, his voice cracking. "They showed me pictures," Lily said, her voice hollow. "The woman who had me first. She died after she tried to get me back. They told me it was an accident, that she was unstable." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Lily, I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know. Why did you leave?" she asked suddenly, pain flashing in her eyes. "When I was little, you just stopped coming." He staggered at the question. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said, ashamed. "Your mom, Vanessa, told me you needed space, that I was making things worse." "I thought you didn't love me anymore," Lily whispered. "I never stopped loving you." Something in her expression cracked, like a dam weakening under pressure. "I want to leave," she said finally. "But they won't let me." "Not really." Ethan reached for her hand. "Then let's go. Now. Before they realize." A door slammed downstairs. Voices rose. Marcus's bark, followed by Vanessa's furious whisper. Ethan grabbed Lily's hand. "Come on." They moved quickly, ducking into the service stairwell. The thunder masked their hurried steps as they descended to the lower level. The mansion had a network of hidden corridors once used by staff. Now, they felt like escape routes. They passed a storage room and stopped cold. Inside, dozens of boxes stacked against the walls. Ethan opened one. Court files, medical records, therapy notes, all organized, categorized, lives stored like inventory. Lily's hand trembled as she picked up a file labeled Sophie Dennings. The name meant nothing to Ethan until he saw the photo clipped to the corner. It was Lily, or rather, the original identity. "That was my name," she said, before Vanessa and Marcus. Ethan looked down at the file. Birth records. A photo of a woman with Lily's eyes. Police reports. Then, buried in a legal statement, a payout agreement. They'd paid off the state to erase Lily's real past. Before either could speak, the door behind them burst open. Vanessa. She stood, breathless, hair wild, mascara streaked from either rain or rage, or both. "You were never supposed to find this," she hissed. "We were protecting her." "From what?" Ethan shouted. "The truth? Her life? She would have ended up like her mother. Poor, dead, forgotten. We gave her a future." "You stole it!" Lily shouted. For the first time, Vanessa faltered. "You don't understand. We did what we had to do. She was going to be taken away. You were spiraling, drinking, angry. Marcus was the only one." Ethan stepped between her and Lily. "No more lies." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "You think you can fix this? Take her back? After all these years? You're not even—" "Enough!" Lily screamed. A long silence fell. Then, Glass shattered somewhere upstairs. A gust of wind howled through the hall as lightning cracked. The front door had blown open. The storm had breached the house. Lily turned and ran, not away from Ethan, but from Vanessa. "Lily," he called, chasing after her, but she was already gone, vanished into the storm outside. Vanessa didn't follow. She simply stood there, breathing hard, defeated. Ethan rushed out into the rain, heart in his throat. He had no idea where Lily had gone. But one thing was certain. This night wasn't over. And when the morning came, nothing would ever be the same again. The sun was just beginning to rise, though it brought no warmth. The storm had passed, leaving the estate cloaked in damp silence. Rainwater pooled in the gravel drive, and shattered branches littered the lawn like bones from some great beast. Inside the house, the chaos of the previous night had given way to a tense calm, but outside, on the edge of the forest that bordered the property, Ethan stumbled through the underbrush, mud splashed up to his knees, breath hitching with every shout of Lily's name. He had searched the gardens, the guest house, even the stables. Nothing, no trace, and then finally a footprint, small and half-flooded, leading toward the woods. His legs ached, his lungs burned, but he pressed forward, fueled by a singular, desperate instinct. Find her. At last he saw her. Lily sat on a moss-covered boulder just past a clearing, wrapped in a blanket of fog, soaked through. Her arms were crossed tightly over her knees, her face turned away. "You found me," she said, quietly, not looking up. "I never stopped trying," Ethan said, stepping carefully toward her. She gave a bitter laugh. "You did once." He knelt beside her, but didn't touch her. "Not yet." "I thought walking away would keep you safe," he said. "I thought if I let you go, maybe you'd be happier. Stronger." Lily looked at him, eyes rimmed with red. "All it did was make me feel disposable." The words cut, but Ethan didn't flinch. He deserved it, every word. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For not fighting harder, for trusting them, for not seeing it sooner." A long silence stretched between them. Then she reached into her hoodie pocket and handed him something. A DNA test envelope, slightly crumpled, slightly damp, unopened. "I found it in Vanessa's desk," she said. "I thought I wanted to know the truth, whether you were really my dad or not, but I couldn't open it." Ethan took the envelope with trembling hands. His heart thundered as he tore it open, slowly, reverently, like it held the last piece of his soul. The paper inside was brief, clinical, blunt. Probability of paternity, 0%. He swallowed hard, nodded once. "I guess that's that," he said. Lily watched him, her face unreadable. But then Ethan folded the paper, slid it into his pocket, and looked her straight in the eye. "I don't care," Lily blinked. "You may not be mine by blood," he said, "but you are mine by choice. Every memory, every bedtime story, every scraped knee in school play. That was real. I raised you, Lily, and I will keep fighting for you. If you let me." Tears welled in her eyes, slow at first, then unstoppable. She launched herself into his arms with a sob, and this time Ethan didn't hesitate. He wrapped her in the kind of embrace that says, "I am here. I will not leave again." They stayed like that for a long time, two broken people holding each other in the ruins of everything they once believed. Eventually, the sound of sirens pierced the air. They returned to the estate to find police cruisers lining the drive and unmarked sedans idling near the front gate. Officers were already inside, taking statements from staff, guests, and a pale, visibly shaken Vanessa. Marcus stood cuffed and silent on the steps, flanked by two detectives. He looked up as Ethan passed, but said nothing. Ethan led Lily straight to the lead investigator, handing over the folder of documents he'd taken from Marcus's study. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Enough to expose the fraudulent DNA tests, the forged therapy reports, the hidden custody settlements. Enough to make them pay. Lily was taken aside gently by a female officer, offered a warm blanket and cocoa. She nodded when they asked if she needed someone present. She pointed at Ethan. "He's my dad," she said simply. And just like that, she had chosen him too. Later, Ethan stood on the veranda, watching as Marcus was loaded into a car, followed closely by Vanessa, who screamed her innocence until the door slammed shut. He didn't feel triumphant, only tired. One of the detectives approached him. "She'll need a place to stay," he said, nodding toward Lily, now sitting with one of the younger officers, telling her story with remarkable clarity. "You up for that?" Ethan nodded. "I've failed her once. I'm not going to do it again." "She's tough," the detective said. "But she's got a lot of healing to do." Ethan looked at her, his daughter not by blood, but by every beat of his heart, and nodded again. "So do I." As the sun rose higher, golden light finally touched the estate. It fell on broken glass, torn streamers, muddy footprints, and chaos, but also on something new, a beginning, one forged not by deception, but by choice. And this time, Ethan would be there every step of the way.